And so if this is the case, if this book that we read from is reliable, if Jesus fulfilled what he was supposed to be, if the Bible is true and it claims authority in saying yesterday, today, and forever, Jesus is the same, then the transformation that we see in the life of the Israelite people can be a transformation that we experience here today. It's not just a hope from the past. It's not just an allegorical story that speaks to a bigger story. It is a historical, accurate, literal, grammatical document that we hold that testifies to the past and speaks towards our present and towards the future. It gives us hope. And it lights a light in a time of life like this, when things are dark and cold and hard and dreary and miserable and all those kind of things that you're going to mutter when you walk outside the door here today. It shines a light and it brings a blessing because Jesus is who he says he is. And so when we read this, and so with this understanding, when we read these words in Isaiah chapter 9, we come and understand a reliability and an accuracy of the word and the prophetic names given to Jesus. That he wasn't just, these were not just royal names, but these are also relational names. They're ways that he actually connects to us, offering real hope and real help. And in Isaiah 9, it starts with Wonderful Counselor. The name Wonderful Counselor is the construct of two Hebrew words, the first meaning beyond understanding. And if you were to translate it into other ways, it could mean magnificent or glorious or spectacular. And the second word, counselor, means one who instructs and one who guides. Yes, as a scholar or one with authority, but also as a dear friend. Someone who you can call late at night, who can come alongside of you, who you can go on a road trip with and share your life with. This is a very practical way that Jesus moves in our lives, that he works in our lives. Not as a distant God who's out there, but as a present friend who will help us and guide us forward. And so when we think of the Wonderful Counselor, in my studies this last week, what I discovered is that there are two descriptive words that are used to describe the way that he works in our lives, the way that he moves in our lives in this season. In a season where we are looking towards the Christ child, a season of Advent, a season that is a journey that moves us towards the living Christ, the promised Messiah. He is called the Wonderful Counselor. We can see this play out in our lives in two specific ways. And the first one is this. The first way that a Wonderful Counselor moves in our lives is that he gives wisdom into our situations and into our story. He passes wisdom forward. And when we think of wisdom in the Bible, there are probably two names that stand out. And I'll present them to you chronologically. The first is Solomon. When we think of wise people, we think of Solomon. In Solomon's case, the word counselor was used to describe him. In 1 Kings chapter 3, there were two women who came to Solomon and they had a problem. They were going to, they had a child, and they were trying to dispute or trying to wrestle through who the true mother was of this child. And when Solomon looked at the situation, he said, okay, well, here's the solution. We're going to cut the baby in half, and we're going to give half to you, and we're going to give half to you. And then you will both be blessed. You'll both have a part of what you're looking for. And when the true mother heard this, her heart broke, and she said, no, don't bring any harm to that child. Give the child to the other woman, because I would way rather that that child be whole and blessed and not harmed than anything happened to him. And when Solomon heard this, when he saw this, he said, okay, you're the true mother, because the true mother would never want harm to come to the child. And so he gave the baby to the true mother and all the family. The wisdom of the moment changed the reality for that woman in that moment. And then they went on their ways. The second person that stands out in scriptures, and when it comes to wisdom, is of course Jesus Christ. But the difference was that if Solomon's wisdom led somebody forward for a moment, the wisdom of Jesus transformed someone for a lifetime. He left people changed. He left people stirred. And it wasn't just for a season or for a specific instance. It was transformational for the rest of their lives. People, when they heard the wisdom of Jesus, would stop what they were doing and follow him, hoping to glean more. They wouldn't leave him behind. And as the religious leaders saw this, we see this problem that presented itself to them. In John chapter 7, as Jesus is performing miracles, and he's teaching, and he's in his deliverance ministry, the religious leaders started to get really concerned because they saw that their crowds were dwindling as those crowds moved to Jesus and they started to follow him. And as these crowds were starting to follow Jesus, they knew they had to do something about this person that they couldn't describe. He was described then as maybe the Messiah, as maybe a prophet, as maybe a good teacher, as maybe someone who was even demonized. They couldn't describe who Jesus was, and so they sent soldiers to him to try to capture him and bring him in and get him under control again. When the soldiers went out to see him, even they were amazed, and they came back empty-handed, and the religious leaders are like, "What are you doing? Where is Jesus?" And they said to the religious leaders, the soldiers said, "No one speaks the way that this man does. We couldn't bring him in because he is indescribable. He was doing things that were beyond comprehension. We couldn't find a reason to hook him and accuse him of anything." What they revealed there was that the wisdom of Jesus spoke into life in ways that no one else could. The wisdom with which he spoke towards, the way that he ministered, didn't just touch people for a moment. It was transformational in the way that they played out their lives. It gave them hope. It gave them reasons to find blessing. It put a light at the end of the tunnel, and it caused them to follow him, not just, as I said, for a moment, but for eternity, what would eventually become eternity. And the good news of this is that on days like today that are cold and dark and blustery and dreary, when we come to the wonderful counselor, when we journey towards the Christ child, we come to one who is incredibly wise. That when we submit and subject ourselves to the teachings and the writings of the scriptures, when we hear and allow him to speak into our lives, he speaks into our lives with a blessing that will change us for the rest of our lives. When we connect to the one who speaks life and wisdom into our situations and our stories, it will be transformational. And we will connect with one who doesn't just hear us and see us, and who will just leave us struggling and in our weariness, but he will show us a better pathway forward that will bring hope into a season that often lacks. The hope of the character in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6 is that not only is he wise, that he will continue to bring wisdom into our life. And this is good news in days where, as I said, wisdom seems to be lacking. Well, the second quality that we see in a wonderful counselor is somebody that has experience. This coming promised Christ child wasn't some distant king who just ruled over us. He would be like an older brother who lived amongst us and who understood us and in every way walked with us through all seasons of life. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15 and 16 says, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace that we may receive mercy and find grace in helps in times of need." So often in life, when we need wisdom, when we need counsel, we don't go to people who might just have an idea about how to make things better. It's not helpful to go to someone and say, "I need to figure out a better way here. I need some help and advice," and have them just hand us a book and say, "Figure it out." We don't need theorists in our life. Friends, we need practitioners who can journey with us and who know us. And this is who Jesus is. He can pass forward wisdom and discernment. And from experience, he can speak into our lives. I was listening to a pastor this past week who said this. He said, "There is nothing that you experience that Jesus Christ hasn't experienced. Lack of resources, born into poverty, from a nowhere town, teenage parents whose son was considered illegitimate, blue-collar, dysfunctional family, rejected, half-siblings, no one believed him and abandoned him, depression, anxiety, acquainted with grief, man of sorrows, Jesus knew it all. And when we come to him, our wonderful counselor listens to us sympathetically because there is no suffering or pain that he hasn't gone through.